Sarah J. Maas does it again. This book was epic. I did not see that ending coming, and believe me, I'm good at picking up on endings. So today we're going to be discussing Crescent City 2, House of Breath and Air. This book was beautiful, it was fun, it had everything I wanted. So let's get into it. So let's start with the plot. What was the main conflict? Once again, this is a large book, so there are a number of subplots, such as Cormac's whole existence, the rebels, Rune and the mysterious woman, and finding out more information about Danica. However, I feel like the main plot is finding Sophie and figuring out Project Tor. Since those two things were intertwined, I consider these both to be the main plot. So let's take a look at the plot arc. The exposition of this book is very exciting. We meet another awesome character who dies before we get to know her. This seems to be a pattern in this book series, so I'm really hoping, fingers crossed, that Lydia does not die at the beginning of book 3. Maas starts by introducing another new magic type, the Thunderbird. This is interesting to me because it sounds like Hunt's magic, though it's different because it's found in humans and is wielded differently. It's also the first hint the worlds are mixed form of magic from different places, which is something you should look for if this is your second time through the book. See where the different worlds are intersecting. The exposition for this book allows the author to set up the main conflict and bring in new and old characters. I do think it was an effective exposition because it gets us engaged in finding Sophie and her brother. I hoped throughout the book that both of them were alive and could help Bryce solve the problem. However, after the exposition, the beginning of book 3 was a bit slow. I'm hoping that Maas ties all of these strings together in book 3. There are so many different magic systems to work with and so many fun characters that I have really high expectations. I think the best way to talk about the building action for this book is to talk about each character's arc. So we'll start with one of the new characters in this book, Cormac. Cormac is Rune and Bryce's cousin, and he's no one's favorite. His appearance in the book and the tie to the mysterious hooded man in the exposition was a bit obvious for me. His appearance and caring about the rebel cause was a great way to get everybody, namely Bryce, vested in the rebellion. He is also a perfect teacher for Bryce. He can deal with her sass and push her to become better. Now, Cormac's biggest moment is when he sacrifices himself in the rebel battle. After finding out that the love of his life is dead, Cormac sacrifices himself and buys Bryce and her team more time to help the rebels as well. Although it's always difficult to lose a character, I didn't find this death to be too heartbreaking. Honestly, I don't think anyone really likes the guy, unfortunately. He's a prickly guy, and although he has a soft side that we see when he takes Bryce to the dance, and his love of the rebellion, he's not really a well-liked person. He's just, turning a new leaf in the book. Now, I do love when authors include characters like Cormac in their novels because it's always good to have another character with a different perspective from the whole group, someone who pushes against the pricks. Also, he helps Bryce see a different side of him and realize that people are more complex than we think, which is always my favorite part about reading. The next journey is Therion. Now, Therion is one of my favorites. I don't know why so many people don't like him. I like to think that Therion looks like Jason Momoa, but that could be because he played Aquaman, and that's kind of a similar vibe. In this book, we learn more about Therion's past and why he feels trapped in his current role. While Therion played a minor role in book 1, he is instrumental in this book from the beginning. He helps Bryce search for the missing boy, he provides witty banter, and he saves the group by bringing them to the Water Kingdom. This move not only saves the group, but gives them valuable insights into the landscape of the world, and we find the body of Sarah. At the end of this book, Therion is trying to escape from his poor life choices, wooing a princess because he wants to sleep with her, when he signs an allegiance to, of all people, the Viper Queen. I'm curious to see where this story is going to go. We know that Mass has hinted that there might be a fourth book in the series featuring side characters, and since we haven't had a book from the Water Court, it only makes sense that Therion gets his own book. The next character I'd like to discuss is Ethan. Being kicked out of the clan by standing up for Bryce to Sabine, we find Ethan homeless and on Bryce's doorstep. This is another character we didn't see a lot of in book 1 that plays a big role in this book. Ethan is a sunball player and a total heartthrob. He also has the hots for Bryce until he finds a woman who he thinks could be the heir to the wolf line. But I digress. Ethan is very lost in this book, much like Bryce was lost in book 1. Ethan helps Bryce sneak around Hunt to get more research done for the rebellion. He also helps Therion, who has been tasked with finding the boy for the Queen of the River. Ethan is such an excellent side character, and until recently, I thought he had died when Bryce and Fury were saving Emil, but I'm very glad he's not dead. I'm not sure how Mass is going to wrap up this storyline with everything else going on in the book. Again, maybe this storyline gets wrapped up in Therion's book, House of Many Waters. I just feel like if they put it in the next book, it's just going to be too much. Now let's move to Bryce. Bryce again makes a ton of character growth in this book, both mentally and emotionally. At the beginning of the book, Bryce is trying to figure out what happened to Danica. She and Ethan find a number of documents in one of Danica's tables. These documents start the search for the rebels and the young boy. Also, emotionally, Bryce is trying to return to her life by going to dance class. Bryce also finds a new job at the library where she's able to research Project Thur. As the story progresses, Bryce learns more about Danica, which leads her to the Wolves, where Bryce is made an honorary wolf by the head of the Wolves, which is a slap in the face to Sabine. We love this moment. We also learn that Danica was not that great of a friend. No, she was terrible. She not only kept the rebellion a secret, but she also was a bloodhound, and she had a mate. All of this new information is making me question Danica and her character. Maybe Bryce really wasn't that good of a friend. Why didn't she trust her? I do feel like all of this new information feels a bit out of left field. I just don't love how Mass has made Danica such an enigma. Throughout the novel, Bryce also grows her power with Cormac as she tries to figure out how to train and teleport, which sounds spectacularly useful. As Bryce continues to search, it leads her to be attacked by a group of Reapers. This is strange because most people do not seem to know anything about these creatures, and they're supposed to stay in the Bone Quarter. All of this research and the mysterious attack led to one of the coolest parts of the book. Bryce is curious to know what happened to Danica and Connor's souls, and is also wondering if she can get more information about the boy and the Thunderbird and the random attack on her the other day. Hunt and Bryce go to the Bone Quarter to confront the Underking for more information. The Underking ends up revealing many secrets to Bryce and Hunt, such as his people feed on First Light and the souls that live in the Bone Quarter, and he has lost control of some of his Reapers. It seems a little bit suspicious that he's being so forthcoming, but that is because he was not expecting Hunt and Bryce to leave. Their fight scene is awesome. We get to see how powerful Bryce and Hunt are together. I will talk more about these two when I talk about them in the themes. Now, before we discuss Hunt, let's talk about another male, Rune. Rune has a few romantic arcs in this book. Now, I would like to start by pointing out that I was correct about Hypaxia being the night nurse. However, I did not predict that she would have another romantic entanglement that would hinder her romance with Rune. Poor guy. However, when Cormac trusts Rune with the Rebellion's secret crystal, he's able to make a connection with a person who is an integral source for the Rebellion. I think the reveal of who this connection is was one of the biggest reveals of the whole book. Looking back on it, it definitely makes sense that his connection is with Lydia, since she would have intel that no one else would have been able to get their hands on. But it seems unreal when we see Lydia at their meeting place. You just knew it. She was the one. I love this pairing. I am hoping everything works out for them. When Bryce declares who she is without realizing the true consequences, he is there to try to save her. They are also growing their power together as they become stronger. Now, about Rune's prophecy. If he and Lydia do end up together, he might not have an heir because he will be disowned from his family line. Also, the way things are going, his line might end because there's not a kingdom anymore. I'd like to think that Rune's ending is going to be positive because visions from the Oracle are often puzzles and can often be misleading. I really hope it doesn't mean that he dies young, or I just might die. From Hunt's POV, we are able to learn more about the Asteri and how their government works. We're also able to meet the replacement for Micah, Celestiana. We're also introduced to 3 new characters we only briefly heard about, and now they're in our city and our faces. They are Baxia, the Hind, and Pollux. We also learn more about Isaiah and the rest of Hunt's crowd. Now, I feel like Hunt gets the short end of the stick in that book. Poor tortured man. In this book, not only does he have to deal with Celestiana and her crew, but he is also having a hard time communicating with Bryce. In this book, we also learn more about Hunt's background. We learn about his mother and his love for her and how she motivated him. Her story is so tragic. We also learn more about his relationship with Sashar and how it impacted him. I think it's interesting that she was a bit of a predator. She was able to use Hunt for her own ends, and that really impacts him and his relationship going forward. Hunt is very reluctant to join another revolution because he's already lost so much fighting for the last one. One might say that he also lost himself like Bryce lost herself when Danica died. So in losing that, it is very clear why he wouldn't want to get involved in another revolution. What could he lose when he's gained everything anew? Another interesting we learn from Hunt's story is more about Baxian. At the beginning, Baxian is trying to get close to Hunt, which feels a little bit weird. Later, as we learn, Baxian was Danica's mate? What? And we understand why he wanted to get away from the brutality of Pollux and his ilk. I especially feel for Hunt at the end of this book, which is what we're going to talk about now. The climax of this book is absolutely mind-blowing. Of course, in proper SJM fashion, the end of this book leaves us in shambles. Throughout the book, the team gathers information about Thur, the Renasts, and the information eventually leads them to a room in the Crystal Palace called the Dusk Room. Bryce and the team divide and conquer to find more information and gain access to the Dusk Room. Bryce is able to enter the Dusk Room, and she finds out that the Asteri have been feeding on everybody in that city, and this is not the first place they've tried to do this. Sounds oddly familiar, kind of like the flag in Throne of Glass. Then she realizes that she has been trapped by the Asteri. Rune and Hunt are trapped as well, and then they are saved by Lydia, and then they are all trapped in a room with mirrors. Hunt once again has the crown placed on his head. Bryce uses her powers to open a portal to another dimension in the mirror room, and she winds up in the world with none other than Rhys. What? Now Hunt, Lydia, and Rhys are being held prisoner, and Bryce somehow has to get back to save them. This is going to be epic. I cannot wait. So let's move to themes. We see many of the themes in this book that were similar in book 1. They've just changed a little bit with new characters in different situations. Let's start by analyzing my favorite thing, love. Once again, there are many types of love in this book. We have family love, which we see with Bryce and her mother and her stepdad. I love at the end of the book when Bryce's mother takes a meal and keeps him safe. We also see Rune, Cormac, and Bryce working together through a difficult family circumstance, which I love. Cousins have that special bond, right? They are really the only ones that understand your family as well as you do. The positive family relationships in this book are again unique to this universe, and I'm glad for them. I think we can learn from these relationships that family is worth fighting for. We also have a number of great friendships in this book. Even though we find out that Danica wasn't really all that great of a friend to Bryce, she finds many new friendships in this book and reclaims many friendships that she's lost. I think one of my favorite parts in this book is we learn about how Juniper saved Bryce's life. In this moment, we understand Bryce and the true extent of her sadness. We also see a vulnerable side of Bryce that we don't often see. There are also many friendships in this book that are made and solidified. Ethan becomes friends with Rune and his friends. Tharian becomes friends with all of them. I think this gives him the courage to leave the River Queen. Bryce rekindles her friendships with Fury, Juniper, Ethan, and gets new friends. Hunt even seems to become closer to Isaiah, and sort of makes friends with Baxian. This book is all about building friendships and a found family. I hope that these friendships save Hunt and Rune, because who knows how long it will take Bryce to get back. I think we can learn a number of lessons about friendship and love from these relationships, but I think the number one lesson we learn is that you are stronger with your friends than you are alone. There are a number of romantic relationships solidified in this book, and I really only want to focus on one of these, and that is Bryce and Hunt. Yes, I'd love to analyze all the other relationships in this book, but I think you'd be here all day. So let's dive in with these two. Bryce and Hunt have settled into their new lives and are living together in Bryce's apartment. However, not everything is perfect in paradise. With Ethan moving in and Bryce putting a 1-month ban on their sex life, these two are trying to figure each other out. I do like that they don't just jump into a relationship and take the time to get to know each other. However, as we know, Bryce was pulling away from Hunt because she was afraid. Then we got the glory of the rooftop gym scene. Yeah, that was a good one. I'm really glad that they got to choose to fight for each other and stay together. What I love about Bryce and Hunt is that they build each other up. Yes, they tease each other, but when it comes down to it, they complement each other perfectly. I love that we get to see their everyday life, watching TV, going on dates, and just being normal. Even though this book was slow and a little bit painfully slow at times, I think it was worth it to see the relationship build, as well as the other relationships in this book. I think what we learn from Bryce and Hunt is that true love builds you up and helps you become the person you are meant to be. That is the same message from the first book, but I do think it's an important message, and I do think it's important to be consistent from book to book. We see this in Bryce and Hunt's relationship, as well as the other relationships or failure of relationships in the rest of this book. Like the first book, this book also covers the theme of identity. Although some of these characters are in their 100s, some of them are actually only in their 20s, and they all seem developmentally about the same age. Each of these characters is on a quest to figure themselves out and figure out what defines them. Each arc I mentioned earlier has a person trying to figure it out, but none more than Ethan. In this book, Ethan loses many of his key identifiers. Being a wolf without a pack must be really tough. But he also gives up his identity of being a sunball player. It seems like Ethan was a very good player, and this was probably an important part of him. Like Bryce in book 1, Ethan is trying to figure out who he is and what he stands for. I love Ethan's journey because he learns to become an individual and how to make decisions for himself. He also might have found a new alpha to follow. Figuring out who we are by ourselves is a difficult journey. However, the characters in this book don't do it alone. They find friends who are willing to accept them while they make mistakes and figure things out. Again, I think the message here is similar to the last book with another addition, that in order to figure yourself out, you need to take risks and be willing to break away from the norm. All of these characters are now rebels. They weren't afraid to make the difficult choices and stand up for what they believe in. Thanks for listening to this episode of According to Your English Teacher. If you like this, please make sure to subscribe You can also keep up with what I'm reading on my Instagram, according.toyourenglishteacher, or you can find me on Goodreads, though I am woefully behind on Goodreads. Anywho, I am on Goodreads. My name is Sam Gunther, according to your English teacher. I would love, love, love to connect with you on either of those platforms, and that way we can chat about books that we are reading. Also, if you want to throw me an email, my email address is atyet33@gmail.com. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback if you have any for me. Before I sign off, let me leave you with one of my favorite quotes from this book. Our love is stronger than time, greater than any distance. Our love spans across the stars and worlds. I will find you again, I promise. Thank you for listening to this episode. It was written by me and edited by Dallin Gunther. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And as always, happy reading.